views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
All right, everybody, so I think we're going to get started, so if we could take a seat, that would be great. I want to just lay out, just real quick, some ground rules before we get started. Thank you very much. My name is Walter. I'm the director of the Andrew Freedman Home. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Let me get out behind us. So I guess the main thing is I want to just start with the fact that we're all from the community in different aspects. So this conversation is a conversation for understanding. Please, as you're expressing your ideas and beliefs, have a level of respect for the people that you're talking with and other people, or maybe even people not in the room. And also just from the fact that I want people to see, and I think we all want people to see what we are in the Bronx. And we can have that type of conversation without the law and something else. So I would very much like to lay that out just in the beginning. Let's just be respectful while we're talking to each other and with each other. Second thing, today, if you don't know, in front of you is what we're going to be talking about. And it's basically two parts. This is Loving the Bronx. We hope to do this quarterly. You don't know. But what we're talking about today is artists and social responsibility, not just because of recent events around It's the Bronx. That's just an example, but that's not really the narrative or even the conversation I think it's been coming for a long time. I myself am late to that conversation in many ways, but we're talking about it now. So if we could even take a couple minutes to do and just read what we're going to be talking about today, we'll make two parts. Artists and social responsibility, and then community assets. So that's what we're going to talk about today. There are facilitators who are here who should take maybe a couple seconds and just say something about yourselves. Charles, April, Elia, people that I know and some of you might know that are very active in the community in different ways, whether they're the artist community, whether it's through social development, whether it's through conceptual design, whether it's through running an institution. And the four of us are here more as facilitators. We're not experts. We have the experience that we have. So if there's no more questions, and if everybody's okay with what I said, then I'm going to pass the mic over so that everybody else can introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. All right, thank you very much.
Hi everybody, Charles Bryson Gonzalez. I have a black hat on today, but I wear many hats, so you can see them piled on top of my head. So one of the hats that I wear is I'm the co-founder of BAD, the Bronx Academy of Arts and Dance. And it's an organization that has been in the Bronx for 20 years. We began in Hunts Point in 1998, and we were there for 14 and a half years. Currently, we are in Westchester Square, on the campus of St. Peter's Church, and we are a space that presents works that are empowering to women, to people of color, and the LGBTQ community. We break them together through a series of festivals. The other hat that I wear is the chair of the Bronx Council on the Arts, and that organization has been around for 50 years. And primarily what it's been historically is an organization that provides individual grants through real awards to artists and also to organizations through community arts grants. So there's a lot of re-granting programs that happen through the Bronx Council of the Arts. In addition, there are development workshops and different things, and the Bronx Council just moved to a new location in Westchester Square, and we'll be having an opening probably in the summer or the fall. It's literally just boxes in the space right now. That's one hat. I'll say two more hats, and then there'll be more opportunities to talk. One is I'm a writer, I'm also a writer, and I have a book that's published, and I have a playwright as well. And I'm also on the board of the National Association of Latino Arts and Cultures. organization that is based in San Antonio, but it's a national organization. So I'm super hyper-local in the Bronx, and I love the borough, but I also have a national perspective of things that are happening around the country in terms of art and social responsibility, and that's what I'll share with you now, and I'm glad to be a part of today's event.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is April Simone. I was born and raised in the Bronx, and I'm a co-founding partner of a research and design firm called Design and Movie. In 2015, we launched an exhibition called Undesigned the Red Line, and it really looked at the historical transformation of communities as a result of policies like redlining, urban renewal, etc., and how communities were intentionally designed to be disinvested. Since 2015, we have traveled with this exhibition throughout the country from coast to coast, really trying to create a space, much like today, to activate conversations around misnomers of how communities become disinvested. It's very hard for people to think progressively around how do we change the dynamics of socio-spatial dynamics of communities if we don't understand how we even got to a place of disinvestment again that we're really lined with white supremacy. And this exhibition, I welcome you all to come upstairs and tour it, is on the second floor, has lived in the Andrew Freedman Home since 2015. And the goal has been, and thousands have come through this corridor to see the exhibition. It's been used by various community members, and again, it really is, particularly in the space of architecture and urban planning, to say, what does just development look like? What does social responsibility look like as a planner and as an architect? I'm currently pursuing my master's in architecture at the Spencer School of Architect, and I really feel that a forum like this today, it's about visual representation within the community, but it's also how community assets, particularly ours, become commodified, and how in that commodification process, many of us that have been on the front lines of major epidemics, whether in HIV, whether in heroin, whether in crack, or unprecedented violence in our community, are not reaping the rewards of this new entrenchment of investment. So I'm here today just to share my experiences again, not just from the local perspective of the Bronx, but traveling nationally, because the question of art as a commodity and how it's used to, again, really transform who gets represented and demographics in communities needs to be activated, but also how do we find alliances to speak about how do we transform the current narrative of the Bronx. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elia Alba. I should put it out there. I was born in Brooklyn, raised in the Bronx, left the Bronx, and came back to the Bronx in May of 2018. I've been an artist now for about 25 years. My work is concerned with how communities interact with one another, how differences are just a platform for finding ways of what makes us the same, which brings me to a project that I started called the Supper Club. I started it in 2012. Initially, it was a project because I was always, back then I was noticing that a lot of like magazines, this was like pre-Oscars Oh So White, looked oh so white. So I wanted to take all my friends of color and create this kind of zine with them in them. In order to contextualize those images, I created 3 dinners. And what I found that when all these people, I just assumed that, oh, we're all artists of color and we're all on the same page. No, we're not. And it was actually very surprising. It was a little painful, too, to even understand that, but it was very important for me to continue with engaging conversation through dinners, to, I guess, for me to understand why people were feeling so differently about things that I think we would be feeling the same. And it just evolved into a larger project than what I've ever anticipated, and now it's in a book format, which was published and came out this past April. So I think that's why Walter asked me here, because of those dinners. And because we come together all the time, I do think with the expectation that we're all always on the same page, and we're not. So my main concern is always trying to find what are our commonalities versus what are our differences. Thank you.
Great, and I think I should, and just so you guys know a little bit about me, I've been director of Andrew Freedman Home for 7 years, part of an organization called MBSCC, Mid-Bronx Senior Citizens Council, started by my mother, Jeanette Perrier. It's a nonprofit. One of the things that it does is it has 25 buildings of low and moderate income housing. So we deal with the community not just from this particular perspective of art and social responsibility, but then also dealing with a basic reality of housing and rents. So I kind of have two brains. Sometimes I have to also interact with developers or people who develop property on multiple levels. So that's a little bit of my background. People see me a lot in just this light, but I actually have another job, for lack of a better word. So I think Elia kicked it off in a great way when she said that, we're all or mostly artists of color, and we're all on the same page, and we're not necessarily all on the same page. So the goal of this is for understanding, and that's why listening is important. You don't have to agree. And the goal of this is also network, meaning like maybe you'll see people in this room that you can build with, maybe yes, maybe no. And the goal of this is to continue this and hopefully develop some communal strategies, and we can effectively not allow the Bronx to be rebranded. So I'll kick it off there. If someone wants to start on the idea of artists and social responsibility, that's fine. If not, I could start with some of the ideas that I was thinking about. There's 4 mics, 1 on each side. Please, as you're being respectful, also pass the mic over to other people who want to say something. So does anyone want to kick it off, or shall I? Hold on.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elisa Carmona. I represent, as an individual artist, a singer, and a writer. I am also founder of Morrisania Band Project. We were one of the headlining artists for It's the Bronx. My question to get us started is, what is our social responsibility to each other? There's been a lot of talk about gentrification and just different things, a lot of words thrown out there. And there were artists that were represented in the canceled event that I don't feel were included in the final decision. So what is our responsibility to each other as Bronx artists? Deep question.
No problem. I think going off the question that you just asked, I think it's our responsibility as artists we have a very hard time asking for help, and I speak as a person who also has a very hard time asking for help. We should be able to sustain.
Stand up, brother, so we can see you.
Sorry, I have a little anxiety.
No problem.
But it's to create opportunities for each other and also be able to cultivate that community through the shared understanding that we're all struggling. And my heart goes out to you, and I'm sorry that you lost some money through that decision. And I hope that we're able to cultivate community here today that allows your voice to reach more people than might have been at that one event, because I feel like you're here representing yourself and advocating for yourself. That will pay off. Continue doing what you're doing, and the artists will follow up, because we will cultivate from this, and we will cultivate more events that will cater to hopefully you and the rest of the communities that are here. That's our responsibility, because we can find the space. I know we can. We just have to be able to ask for help and be offered help by the residents and the establishments that are available, because a lot of opportunities go unpromoted. I know that I hire people and I'm like, hey, could you just shout this out 2 weeks before we do it? And it just doesn't happen. And I'm like, I'm not gonna badger anyone, because if they don't want the bag, they don't want the bag. But that's our responsibility, to find each other more opportunities from these types of heartbreaks, because I feel like, once again, as artists, when we fall, we rise even harder, at least together. Sorry, I'm John Pena, and I represent Reina Project New York, which is a new initiative that's partnering with artists and local initiatives to raise money. Our first event was in March, and we raised $700 for trans and gender nonconforming care, and we have 2 or 3 more events signed up for this summer, and I hope we can continue to cultivate events and build community. So if anyone is interested in also participating, give me your information, and hopefully we can make something happen. I think everyone's voice here needs to be heard. Thank you.
I guess I'll go.
Thank you.
My name is Shalene Rodriguez. I'm an artist born and raised in the Bronx. I'm also a community organizer with Take Back the Bronx. I think that that's a great question, Ms. Carmona. It's a question that we've been asking since 2013. I think before we answer any of these questions, we need to understand what the landscape is. The Bronx is the last borough to fall to gentrification in this city. We know this. We saw it happen in Brooklyn, in Bushwick, blah, blah, blah. This is a narrative that we all know very well. I think what's happening, through my experience, what I've noticed is what's happening in the Bronx is very painful, is that it's become infighting. It's become infighting because the Bronx has been starved of funding for so long that you have many different entities. You have private entities like, developers, JCal, Somerset, et cetera, waving money in people's faces that have been hungry. I get it. But you also have the city. You have the city through the de Blasio administration, through his so-called affordable housing, and when the city decides to, say, do rezoning or something like this, right? To change the rules about what can or cannot be built in an area, along come other things. Your parks get renovated. So like St. Mary's saw $30 million, right? We know that there's a $50 million precinct being built right across the street from Horizon's juvenile detention facility that's going to mirror something that looks like on the High Line for the cops, Your streets get repainted, you get a bike lane, you get new trees. All of these things happen. This is something that our community has been begging for a long time. So a lot of the infighting that happens also is like, like revitalization is something that we've been starving for. And then the older folks in the community are like, well, we want this. We do want this. But that is something that is being laid out for private development. It's for private development. It's because a developer wants to build somewhere where people want to live. So it's no coincidence that the Grand Concourse has all new, beautiful train stations with commissioned art by Rico Gatson. I myself am building a permanent public sculpture on 173rd and Morris Avenue, set to go on display in 2022. It's new money that's coming into the area. If we don't discuss among ourselves and figure out what is yes and what is no, then this is going to continue to happen. It's going to continue to happen, okay? And it's not just someone who is a sleazeball like Marco Shalma, who's just trying to take advantage and exploit, but it's also going to be how things are funded from the city and why they're funded. We need to develop a filter among ourselves, among our community, so that we can know how to say no and when to say no. To the people who were in that show, I apologize, but this is something that needed to happen for us to be here today.
Hi, everyone. So I wanted to follow up on what she brought up because I actually prepared some remarks to give us the historical context that from a Mott Haven perspective, because my family's been in Mott Haven for 25 years, I was absent. I did leave. I went off for schooling and work. in civil service and then came back. So I should clarify that because you didn't see me the whole time. Since I came back, I started getting involved in some community advocacy. So I'm not aligned with any organization specifically. I actually have a baby clothing line. So I'm a small vendor and I look for pop-up events throughout the Bronx. And it is my main source of income because I have a chronic disability that makes traditional employment very difficult for me. So I am in the place of many of the vendors that would have been participating. And it came to my attention, and I was asked for my input by Andrew Freedman because I had an event here the Saturday before It's the Bronx was supposed to happen, where I focused on curating a group of small vendors that were socially responsible, socially ethic, and that consider social entrepreneurship a guiding principle for them. So when it came to my attention that the event was then gonna come directly after mine, I was concerned with that because of the optics for the larger community, but also for Andrew Freedman, which since I came back to the Bronx has been one of the spaces I consider safe and nourishing. So I apologize if this is a little long, but I had to go back, and constantly we're getting asked for receipts. So I wanted to present them as clearly as possible. So I'll start. Since 2015, and again, this is Mott Haven, Port Morris, South Bronx centric, just because that's what I can speak to. Since 2015, the South Bronx has been feeling the anxiety that accompanies gentrification. This discomfort found a name and a target in the Macabre Suite party and attempted rebranding of Mott Haven. Behind that party and the Piano District name was Keith Rubenstein from Somerset Partners, event planner Lucian Smith, and art dealer Gene Greenberg. While the community outrage that accompanied these efforts slowed down over time, Rubenstein and friends quickly found an alternative way to rebrand the South Bronx because of that clapback that they got from elected officials and also community members. So numerous housing projects and businesses began to break ground and monetize the history of hip hop, grit, and artistic expression, specifically via graffiti. Today, Brookfield Property Partners, the Chetrick Group, and EXR Somerset, which is his new venture, estimated at about 60 million, operate in Mott Haven under the incentives created by the New York Empire State Development Group. The concentration of public housing in Mott Haven makes us eligible for significant investments via the EB5 funding. Our location makes us prime for development, rezoning, and unethical development, similar to what we saw with the Vezel at Hudson Yards, which received $1.5 billion in EB5 funding. EB5 funding is a program that allows Chinese citizens to pay for an American citizenship by investing funding in communities that are underprivileged. So, yeah. The vessel actually was able to take 80% of the funding allocated through EB5 to develop itself. They did this by creating a new map. The new map shows that the Hudson Yards development was actually married to Central Harlem projects. So they actually redrew a map that took us from Hudson Yards up to Central Harlem, where there is the largest concentration of public housing in Harlem. If you know anything about NYCHA, you know that the reason that they're eligible for EB5 funding is because NYCHA right now is in a crisis. The murals abound below 135th Street, most by famed Tats Crew, OG graffiti artists, not newcomers, and almost all are sponsored by developers. In the summer of 2018, community members and advocates noticed that investors were visiting these murals and brown and black owners via the 3rd Avenue Bid trolley tour. The tours were meant to demonstrate the financial viability of Mott Haven and to justify the speculation that Rubenstein and partners have orchestrated, but have also been supported by community-based organizations like Sobro. Yeah. Simultaneously, the New York Times has contributed to the overt gentrification of this neighborhood by becoming amplifiers of this rebranding campaign. A neighborhood in which you can't find the New York Times for sale is now regularly featured using rose-colored ink. In their reporting, we find the blueprint for an old-school marketing campaign, but Mott Haven has become the product. The Times and others selectively advertise, for example, Bronx News 12, and I thank you for being here today to hear this. They interview and amplify the events and products of entrepreneurs below 135th Street that receive preferential treatment from developers such as Somerset Partners, J-Cow Development. These businesses, Bronx Native and Panology, sorry, my bad. I'll say that again. So these businesses, Bronx Native, The Lip Bar, Nobody's Pizza, and Bistro, get preferential lease terms, generous contracting support.
You're not gonna say Lip Bar?
Oh, Ramona. I'm sorry. Oh, I never said my name. My bad. My name is Ramona. I'm Ramona the Mona on Instagram. That poster on the EB5 visas is on my Instagram because I was raising some hell about that.
Ramona, repeat the thing about the lip bar.
Okay, I'll go back. Ramona the Mona, THE. Okay, so these businesses are Bronx Native and Panology, The Lip Bar, Nobody's Pizza, and Bistro. So how do they get preferential treatment? Their lease terms are generous. This is why it can take them up to 6 months to a year to open and not be in the negative and not self-fund. They get contracting, discounts, and support, which they have spoken about to the media, expressing their thankfulness to companies like J-Cow for helping them come together. So we were saying a few minutes ago, if I were to get a front shop or what brick and mortar for my baby clothing store, I wouldn't know what to do. I would look for assistance and I would look for support. And like she just mentioned, many times in our community, because of the things that have happened in the Bronx, that assistance and that support can only come from this source of funding. They also get networking and product positioning opportunities that make them regulars on media outlets, at events that are private, VIP, and cater to celebrities that are also benefiting from the hardships in our community and our low property value, like Carmelo Anthony, Mos Def, and now Talib Kweli. In return, these business owners, all black or brown, paint a picture that attracts and misleads outsiders. They lend testimony to falsities regarding progress. They highlight via personal and business accounts on social media unattainable goods and experiences being pushed by them and the developers. We see how market rate apartments constructed by their landlords, the same landlords giving them these benefits, are being advertised by restaurant owners. Check out the owners from Bistro. I've actually had to speak to him on Instagram about this. Why are you a restaurant owner telling me to come rent at $2,800 a month in Mott Haven? Who are you talking to?
Facts.
What we don't see is how little these businesses contribute to the neighborhood. And I think this speaks to your question of who are we responsible to. They rent and they thrive in, but don't live in Mott Haven. Ironically, they dress and feed those that are orchestrating the demise of my neighbors. Developers, artists, and entrepreneurs have created a hostile environment and are complacent in our rebranding. They curate events and experiences that are exclusive, private, yet free. The same things that are making our neighborhoods suddenly so attractive seem within our reach. but we are not welcomed in this collective experience. The exclusivity of the compound gallery ensures that locals don't experience Uber pool dependent exhibits. Meanwhile, new residents that are insensitive to our cultural norms, disrespectful, and more likely to engage the NYPD with petty complaints that endanger people of color are in attendance. While all of this plays out, quality of life has not improved for the average resident in my neighborhood. Furthermore, rebranding efforts are harming locals by discounting the challenges we actually do face daily. Mott Haven continues to be the poorest congressional district in the United States. Murders are up 300% as of 2018. Murders are up 300% as of 2018, with no changes in investments that would make this trend be reversed. Mott Haven ranks 59th out of 69 neighborhoods in DNA Info's Crime and Safety Report. It is one of the least safe neighborhoods in the Bronx, second only to Hunts Point. Housing insecurity plagues us, while homelessness and doubling up, which is my personal experience, are augmented by the absence of truly affordable and, more importantly, sustainable housing. Employment opportunities are concentrated at the lowest pay grades, and opportunities for advancement are limited. I'm talking about Fresh Direct there. Saying all the things. Y'all funny. Public education institutions struggle to serve our students while being squeezed out by charters and limited by Department of Education funding. So we are being strangled by charters that are now providing exceptional education to a small percentage of our children, continuing what's been happening for the last 25 years, which is two different communities living next to each other, but facing different opportunities. So these frustrations boiled over for many advocates when the It's the Bronx Festival announced in the fall of 2018. Some noticed that the main sponsors and venue, Union Crossing, was being led by developers, management companies, and brokers with questionable past. A slumlord is included. They just got a new name, but they have horrible Yelp reviews. Future tenants that would contribute superficially to our community while receiving significant tax breaks from the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation were the targets. This was all troubling, especially when we take into consideration the dire statistics previously mentioned and the last decade of similar deals. BOEDC has been at the forefront of our displacement and our insecurity because they have consistently brought in deals, programs, and projects that get the benefits and the financial support that we, those that are hungry, should be getting, but instead go to outside developers and programs and projects. So BOEDC and Community Board 1 have allowed, if not encouraged, numerous projects that create concentrated wealth. The sale of a condo on 138th Street and Park Avenue for $500,000 in no way supports those living on 138th and Lincoln like I do at Mitchell or Alexander. It was apparent that Union Crossing and its opening night were the latest line being drawn in quicksand. But artistic expression and opportunities are necessary, so the event took place, and many of us supported in any way that we could, but did not attend. Hydropunk did and wrote an article after the event that raised serious questions surrounding the ethics of the organizers, rights of the participants and talent, and the role of the event within the context of rebranding of Mott Haven and Port Morris. When the March event was announced with a new location, the Andrew Freedman Home, advocates like myself decided to speak up. I shared this history with AFH, along with the wealth of literature that I collected on rebranding efforts in my community. After communicating with several advocates, organizations, and the coordinators of It's the Bronx, AFH decided to cancel their participation on Thursday. AFH committed to holding this community roundtable to discuss arts and social responsibility. It's the Bronx was eventually canceled because they couldn't secure a venue. Within the days that followed, activists, artists, and vendors began communicating, sometimes in very toxic ways. But it became apparent to community organizers, advocates, and institutions that we needed to create a new way forward. Otherwise, Bronx residents risked losing control of their economic, artistic, and intellectual assets. To ensure that development is sustainable, and more importantly, inclusive of the most vulnerable residents of our borough, Bronx residents are now going to propose that a memorandum of agreement is created. We expect that the signers of this agreement, community stakeholders, institutions like Andrew Freedman, and artists, will design specific goals and programmatic expectations for institutions and participants. So we have a way to move forward. In the meantime, Hydropunk put up a survey, and the responses for that survey are now part of the demands that that MOA is going to be including. So if no one has questions about what I just read, I can pass it on to Hydropunk. I also will be giving them my comments so that they can go on their site. And I have 4 pages of media reporting, which is where I gathered not my thoughts, but all of the evidence and the receipts that folks have been asking for. That's all going to be made public. Thank you.
Ramona, I thank you for that. That was very insightful, and it did address some of my question. And you hit on a lot of statistics that are important. One thing I'd like to say, though, I'm for the community. I was born here 43 years ago, and I don't believe that my experience is exclusive to the Bronx. We're all Bronxites. With that said, it's come to my attention that sometimes protest is a thing of privilege. Whereas you took something from us and didn't put something back. And I'm reachable, Monica. Hey, Lisa. It was presented months ago who the headliners were for It's the Bronx. I don't see a lot of headliners represented in your surveys and responses, but I'm told that we were exploited. I wasn't exploited. I heard what the sister said concerning the sleaze bag, Marco Shalma. I'll say in front of everyone, that has not been my experience with Marco. I'm not here to defend the man. I don't know him past It's the Bronx. I did get a chance to see some of his work with the Bronx Night Market. I have no complaints, but I'm open. If you give me information to consider, I will definitely consider it. Some of the things you hit on, Ramona, I've heard about. Some I didn't. But it caused me to say, wow, I had no idea. Here in the Bronx, we have a 52% high school graduation rate. And for those that graduate, oftentimes they're not deemed college ready. We are poorly funded for everything. I too live in one of the poorest congressional districts in New York, not in New York State, in the United States. And also, with that low funding, we're poorly under-resourced, highly under-resourced, I should say, for the arts. And the limited arts resources there are go to youth, and rightly so, because it complements their education. And so I started by saying that protests are a thing. I'm for social justice. I'm your girl for that. But at the same time, sometimes that's a thing of privilege where we all don't have the same understanding or the same capacity to turn something down. I would like, if I directed my statements to you, Monica, not with any animosity. I support what you're doing. I believe that whether I agree with the outcome of It's the Bronx, I support that you did it for the right reasons, that you care about the Bronx. I just don't feel that it was well-rounded with the consideration of artists. And I'm not saying that that's entirely you or anything. I just think that there's more people at that are at this table that should have been at that table before it was canceled.
So I think it's, you both brought up points which is really central to what we should be talking about, which is opportunity and the fact that basically there's not enough resources and or money, and that artists are expressing, showing, and representing, whether they realize it or not, this environment. So with that being said, we're aware of the situation. How do artists make that decision? Because for me, as far as canceling the event, and for Andrew Freedman Home, some of that dealt with not understanding and being circumspect or suspicious about funding, but also a lot of that dealt with just artists not being represented properly. And what I'm talking about is like insurance, installation, de-installation, basically billing artists. There was another aspect to that decision that just dealt with understanding, or at least wanting the artist to understand that your work is being taken, shown, and you not only don't have control, you don't even know how it's being used. So for me, as institution, community asset, I need to hear from artists, because I've heard many different arguments. I've heard one argument is like, how could you do this? And then the other argument is like, thank you for doing this. But I need to understand from artists, how do you see yourself in terms of this greater responsibility of community development? Because that will impact the decisions that organizations like the Andrew Freedman Home will make, and who is going to be using these spaces, what type of exhibitions art is being shown and presented to the public. How do you see yourselves? I truly want to hear that, because some artists don't take any responsibility in putting their work out, and other artists take a great responsibility when they're presenting their work. So I would like to hear that, please.
My name is Patrick Farrar, and I'm an artist from Co-op City, and I live in the Bronx as well. I feel like that's a big question to ask right now. Like, where do we want to be positioned amongst the architecture that's going up in the Bronx? It's too grand, and it should be something that's already established for us. And it's something that, as far as our founding fathers go, and people as far as the tradition as the Bronx go, we already have established forest already. It's just been broken down and released into Manhattan or whatever gentrified places in Brooklyn. I'm from Co-op City, so I have to go to Brooklyn. I have to travel outside of the Bronx in order to find opportunities, and I have to lug and carry my art with me on a consistent basis. And social media is not it for everyone. Communities like this, where we can sit down and talk, are important, but this is a very small aspect of being an artist and discussing, and this is a very small part about being an artist. It's about creating and consistently staying on your grind. So when you pick your head up and you have to come to events like this, it takes time away from creating, and it's something that should be handled, especially being from the Bronx, being from where rap was originated. All this creative stuff, fashion, every commercial you see has music in it. All this stuff is all absorbed in our community, and it's being stripped from our community. And as artists that are growing up here and coming into our ages, we don't know what to do. And it's too much of a grand question to say, how do we fit amongst the architecture that's going on?
I didn't say how do you fit. I said I want to hear from artists how they see their work when they're presenting.
But that's
easy.
That's,
I'm just trying to clarify something. You don't need to curse, and we don't need to go there.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that as far as what you're asking us to solve an issue that is actually more grand than any artist in this room. We're all here, so the issue should be technically solved if you guys took care of the issue. It's not up to us. Our founding fathers, everybody that's laid the foundation for us in the Bronx are behind us. They understand that we are the artists, we are the next generation, we are bringing creativity to everything that has to do with the city, that has to do with our own people of color and minorities and everybody. So we are here. It's about how can we all come together as artists outside of this conversation, outside of taking time out of our daily work and making time in our own studio and come together and do that without you guys. And per se, like for artists that are here, it's outside of this conversation that we need to stand up and be together. It has nothing to do with this per se. We're here to discuss this topic and be civilized, but we have to make a stand for ourselves, and to ask such grand questions sometimes, it makes it the opposite of just being an artist. It's not this bougie thing that has to do, how are we gonna be incorporated? Let us create and have some control. And that's all that I'm asking for.
What's your name?
My name is Patrick Farrar.
Hi, Patrick. I just want to answer that in terms of what you were saying. I agree with you. I think there needs to be more help and more opportunities for artists. But when I look at all the highly successful artists you see out there, they hustle for it. And what I'm trying to say, there's got to be a give and take. So sometimes the opportunities might not be there for you, but depending on, because then everybody wants to be an artist in their own way. Some people want to be massively successful and they want to do that bougie thing, as you say.
But you're generalizing. I'm talking about even in my community in the Bronx, we don't have younger people writing for our paper. We don't like I heard this lady say it before. She said that it's either the youth or the elderly. Where I live, they're focused on those. They're not focused on between 18 and 28 or the second puberty stage, as you could say. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not worried about us in that phase. So it's not fair. However you look at it, we're not being able to open up Express, and we have to find other avenues that are outside of the Bronx every time. Every time you go onto Eventbrite, you go onto Craigslist, you go onto opportunities for artists, and you see that they're not in the Bronx. Stay out of the Bronx if you're trying to express yourself and get opportunities. And that's what the internet is telling you. That's what you see it on Instagram and on Facebook, but you don't feel it in your community. Everything is very separate. Everything is very separate, and the South Bronx seems to be getting a lot of opportunities that are just popping up out of nowhere.
I agree with you, because when I was moving back and I had to move from where I was, it was either going to Brooklyn or to the Bronx. And I had a lot of people telling me, do not go to the Bronx. Like, straight up, don't go to the Bronx. There's not opportunities there. But what about, I'm going to bring it back, and I don't want to sound like I'm generalizing, but what about that? What about, there has to be, I feel, as artists, some give and take. So you maybe it is you do go on the outside, but maybe you bring that outside in.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Can I
don't.
interject something?
I think you have to.
Can I interject something? Can I interject? I got something to interject.
Hello?
Yeah.
You've been wanting to say something.
Okay.
Yeah, so I feel like we have to disrupt the narrative that it's enough as an artist to just be able to sing, to just be able to dance or to rap. As an artist, you create the value for people, but you also have to understand the business of marketing it and distributing it and owning it. Now, because how do we make hip hop and not trademark that name? Not have ownership over the intellectual property that we created as artists. So what I'm saying is that we can't just sit back idly by and wait for opportunities and resources to come out of the sky. We have the value and we have the worth, we have the talent, and we have the genius inside of us. And it's up to us to educate ourselves on how business is ran, what copyrights and trademarks are, so that we don't get exploited and be the victims of our own ignorance.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello. Oh.
So my name is Flo. I'm with the Sweetness Circle. We're a healing collective based here in the Bronx. I was born and raised in the Bronx. And clearly it's getting a little tense in here, so if we could just take a collective breath real quick, just breathe out all that tension, you know, breathe it out. I know some of us are sensitive. This is, you know. So what I'm hearing a lot of is the clear lack of resources, the clear lack of space, and the clear lack of opportunities. So I guess we can go into a more solution-based plan of thinking, where I think what we really need is classes on how to install artwork, classes on how to market yourself better, resources in spaces like this where everybody knows. I can remember a couple years ago coming here all the time because you guys had a residency for Uptown Vinyl Supreme. Having more spaces that are accessible here in the Bronx and having us all collectively, since we were talking about social responsibility as artists, sharing these resources more fully. Also, of course, there are definitely folks whose opportunities were not manifested through It's the Bronx, and I understand your rage because there was a point where I had my work in the Boogie Down Grind, and not a space you want to show your art, let's just put it that way. So having the community collectively understand, hey, so these are some of the spaces that are playing into gentrification. These are some of the spaces that are exploiting artists where the owners are not really here to help people. Having us know collectively without being unkind, without tearing each other down on Instagram, without all the shade that comes into it, because at the end of it all, we all understand, we're all from the Bronx, we've all dealt with people getting shot, losing friends, losing people, and dealing with the lack of resources, right? So another responsibility we really have towards each other is healing. We have to respect each other. We have to sit down and have actual conversations. A lot of the time, these things also fester. Sometimes we don't know the answer, so we get upset, and we kind of, just let things fester, and it doesn't fix anything. So I think, again, let's take a collective breath. And breathe. And really think, what are the things that you want for yourself from all of this? If you can think of an ideal Bronx, what is the step in between that brings that for you? Is it a class? Is it you being able to deconstruct issues with other artists, with your family? What is it that looks like? And know that because we're all here in community, this is the first step to making it attainable. So I just wanted to leave y'all with that. Thank you.
Hello.
Check.
Hi, my name is BB, also known by my platform by PDTs. My pronouns are she and her. What I'm hearing here is a lot of like I, and Black and brown communities usually don't operate that way, right? We need to think about a communal way of coming together and educating, like Flo said, on our resources, right? Because, I'm sorry, what's your name? Elisa. I understand you said that protesting is a privilege, but also thinking in the I mentality is a privilege as well. Because you said that, hydropunk or people who stopped the It's the Bronx event took that away from you, but we're not the ones who've taken it away from you. The Bronx has been deprived of resources for a long time. And the city councilmen, community activists has not been transparent with the resources that is allotted to us. So when somebody comes dangling a golden carrot in our face, we fall for it. And you might not have been exploited with It's the Bronx, but it's a lot of people that were. And exploitation comes and looks in different forms. It doesn't really have to be like, I'm taking this from you and there's nothing you can do about it. It also comes in a collective form as well. So I'm not a linear thinker. My thoughts are all over the place, so I just wrote a short thing just about how I feel about the Bronx. So yeah. Cultural appropriation isn't only about a privileged group directly stealing cultural resources from a marginalized group and passing it as their own. It's also about manipulation. It's about the privileged group abusing their power to manipulate the marginalized group to consent to their own exploitation. These cultural vultures fly in with their white savior complex and act like they're uplifting the community, but in all actuality, they're self-serving. They prey on vulnerable artists with the false promises that they will provide them with opportunities and exposure. However, in all reality, these artists are tokens, accessories, and marketing tools for big realtor firms to capitalize on for profit. Then those same artists are used as pawns to spread lies, sometimes unknowingly, back to the community that these outsiders come in peace. The Bronx has always been an historical culture club. It's the fucking birthplace of hip hop. Many famed artists came out of the Bronx on their own volition and grassroots community support, and this was way before social media. So I find it hysterical that the people behind It's the Bronx claim that their whole mission is to place the Bronx back on the cultural map as a creative hub. The Bronx has always had an audience, but now that gentrification is hitting the borough, entities like It's the Bronx want to profit off the changing demographics. They go after local artists and promise them 10 to 15 minutes stage time to perform to a gentrified crowd that will bop their head to their music, but off stage will call the cops on them if they feel threatened. They explore our culture, repackage it, make it mainstream, and sell it back to us. It's the Bronx claims they speak for and are for the community, so why didn't they have a community hall meeting before launching It's the Bronx to ask the community members for their thoughts, opinions, and concerns about creating a festival? Many community members didn't know, and most still don't know about the festival, which speaks to a larger problem of white people using their privilege to take up Black and brown spaces and rebrand said spaces to fit their needs and comfort. Invading spaces that don't belong to them is so innate that when there is a direct opposition to their invasion, they can't fathom why and accuse us of being hostile. But when in history have Black and brown people been able to invade white spaces without opposition? I'll wait. Historical pockets of Black and brown communities like the South Bronx and El Barrio, where I'm from, Bed-Stuy, and other marginalized communities throughout New York City exist today because we weren't welcome in other spaces. We created beautiful communities and a culture out of our oppression. Elected officials redlined our neighborhoods. Banks denied our elders car loans and home loans, so they had to stay in the city to be close to transportation. And white flight was very common when Black and brown people moved to the suburbs. So we have a right to defend our homes and be leery of these outsiders. How is It's the Bronx going to help the community other than have a festival? Are they empowering the artists with the tools they need to create their own platform? Are they even paying the artists? Are they even paying their staff? Are they helping to fund business classes so that these vendors, artists could secure smart loans? Are they attending community hall meetings to stop the rezoning and hypergentrification of the Bronx? Are they fighting for tenant rights? Are they holding greedy landlords, realtors, and dirty council members responsible for the displacement of Native community members? Yeah, having a festival in the Bronx is cool, but you know what's cooler? Affordable housing. Quality public schools, free after-school programs, and mental health clinics. To my Black and brown people in the room, the truth is that that realtor firms cannot build on desert land, which means they need to invest in culture arts like you, and like It's the Bronx, and local businesses to attract gentrifiers to the community. So they use cultural events to change their narrative that the Bronx is safe and no longer burning. The cultural hegemonic narrative that marginalized groups can't create their own institutions and platforms without outside influence is a concept based on imperialism and colonialism. We need to stop allowing outsiders to capitalize off our stories. And we need to stop following these outsiders so blindly, just because they're dangling a coated carrot in our face. Do your research, ask questions, talk to your community. I know we all gotta eat, but all money isn't good money. As Malcolm X once said, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing.
Check, check. That was beautiful. Yes. Respect. One love to all in the building. This is coming to you live and direct from a young Cuban Colombian sister from the Bronx. My name is Rosangelica Lopez, AKA Rosangelica Lopez. And I want to thank you to all the panelists. I've been coming to Andrew Freedman Home for a long time. Thanks to Eliefi over there in the corner, I recorded my EP. He just came up to me and said, yo, we gotta do this. I said, okay, cool. I have danced here many times with Dr. Drum, with Bombayo, keeping it real. I have danced here with Uptown Vinyl Supreme. And I'll say this, yes, we don't have places to perform sometimes. It feels like that. It does to my brother from Co-op. I felt that. In 2014, 2015, my friend and I, Sonny Chiba, we said, wait a minute, we got a lot of talented friends. We got a lot of talented friends, and we don't got nowhere to perform. So instead of complaining and waiting and going to Brooklyn, I ain't go to Brooklyn. You know what I did? I said, listen, we gotta wake up. Listen, wait, thank you. But we gotta wake up and be like, all right, let's create these platforms ourselves, and that's what we gotta do. Let's stop talking about the festival. The festival, look, the festival brought us all here. So now that we're all here in one of the hottest venues in the Bronx, we gotta now come and answer Walter's question. So I'm gonna answer your question, because really I came here to speak to y'all. Y'all have a lot of space here. There's two floors. And since we want to talk about research and shit, let's talk about it. Because what I saw online in an article posted in August 2018 is that Andrew Freedman Home is being allotted $1.7 million for renovations, and that's beautiful, and I'm happy for it, because we deserve it and y'all deserve it, and I know y'all gonna put it to good use. My question is, though, to answer your question, what I see myself doing as an artist, which I feel is an answer, it's not too grand of a question. You should be able to say, I do this, I'm an MC, a B-girl, and I teach kids, and I see myself in Andrew Freedman Home in 5 years giving free after-school programs. Right now, I teach after-school all the way in Jamaica, Queens, because there's a lot of programs in the Bronx that, ooh, not hip-hop, ooh, not graffiti, ooh, not this, because that's all delinquent, criminal shit. But I know that Andrew Freedman Home doesn't feel that way, so I want to align myself with y'all and say, okay, how can I get a studio in here, or any of us? If 20 of us applied this fall when the applications open to have studios here, I really hope that one of us gets it. Because if we don't, then it's a real problem, right? Yes or no? All right.
Hello. So I want to pipe, sorry, I know I spoke for a while, but I wanted to pipe up to follow that, because as someone that's doing events regularly, I understand the frustration of Patrick, right, from Co-op, because it is very difficult to find events and supported spaces here in the Bronx. What separates us from the other boroughs, though, is a history that many of us are aware of. The reason why we don't have the resources and the infrastructure to support art expression between the ages of 12 and 24 is because of the history of the Bronx. So I do empathize with him, and I do think that we have to honor that. The few spaces that are in the Bronx don't hire local curators. The program here at Andrew Freedman is not known by the average Bronxite. A lot of people in the Bronx don't come to Andrew Freedman. So for institutions, it is important that artists start asking themselves, what is it that I need from an institution so that I can properly express my art, monetize it, and create generational wealth off of it? Because I'm not trying to see you guys become a one-hit wonder or sell one painting when you're talented as shit. So I want to now hear from folks that were going to participate, because I want to know, what were you getting out of It's the Bronx that other spaces need to be affording you, so that we can make sure that in the agreement moving forward, which we're going to force all of them to sign, what you actually need to thrive has to be included. So what was It's the Bronx giving you that we need to give you to empower you?
Hold on. We have a gentleman over here that's been waiting for a while.
Hello, can you hear me? I can get on Wooza to kind of like, calm it down a little bit. Can you hear me? All right, there we go. So my name is Andres Alvarez. I've been living in the Bronx for about 20 years. I'm Dominican-born visual artist. I'm a portrait artist. And I just wanted to say, going back to the question of what is the social responsibility as an artist, I think to each other, I think we should allow each other to express ourselves freely. I think I'm allowed to do whatever I want with my creativity. There's room for everything within the art scene. Artists as diverse as the people who represent it. There's room for being a social activist. There's room for being, provoke change and just do some portraits. I think art should be more about that. And the faster we get to allow each other to be diverse, the faster we'll be able to grow as a community. Because I don't believe that just because my art doesn't represent a movement, that it should not be allowed to be hung on a wall in a gallery. I think that's, thank you. So I'm on board with almost everybody here with a point. They're very passionate about what they want to do and what they want to change about the way things are in the Bronx. But you have to keep the doors open for those artists who are in the Bronx, who live in the Bronx, who also want to do something else. That festival would not only have been cool to have, but it's necessary. Just because it's not aligned with what you have written on paper as an organization doesn't mean you have to get to shut it down. You don't get to tell me who's oppressing me. You don't get to tell me, I know everybody here knows how hard it is to get your art publicly viewed. I believe that if I'm allowed to have my art, given my background and where I came from, to have my art somewhere publicly where it's accessible to anybody in the Bronx, that's part of, community growth by itself. So I just said, just get on the same page as far as let's just allow each other to be diverse. I don't have to agree with you to be able to show my art. And I don't have to cater my art towards your beliefs. That's it.
Hello. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Felice. I just want to touch a little bit off of what he was talking about, and just say that yes, I agree that artists should have the freedom to express themselves in any way. I do think, however, that it is a big responsibility of our art organizations here in the Bronx to make sure that they provide a space that is safe for artists to express themselves, that it's not going to exploit anyone. I think that falls heavily on them. Let me just look through my notes because it's been all over. Yes, as far as my background, I've been involved in many different things throughout in the Bronx, as far as involving myself with several organizations here, as a mentor to some of the creatives here in the Bronx. Myself, in about 2014, when I started seeing gentrification happening in the Bronx, I decided to start buying domain names for the Bronx in order to preserve the brand. That was something that I did, and I felt like, if we do this, then it won't allow there to be let's say, Bronx night out, unless it's somebody from the Bronx. And I feel like I've been open with many creatives here as far as me having this space and, making it something that if anyone wants to do something that's a Bronx, name in it involved, that they could come to me for the digital, essentially digital asset, and I'm not making a profit off of that. Aside from that, I'm also a founder in a company called WanderDot. We're just getting ready to launch now in May. The main thing about it is tackling gentrification caused by travel and tourism, which I'm not sure how much you guys are familiar with the impact that it has, but it's huge, basically all over the world. Everywhere I go in Paris and Milan, they're dealing with gentrification equally the same way we are, and I've managed to build bridges with a lot of those communities abroad because there's a lot of similarities with what we're going through right now in the Bronx. When we launch, part of the component that is going to be there's going to be a discovery for venue space. So I'm hoping that the organizations and the people that have venues here in the Bronx do come to me. I will come to you as well, but just in case I miss you, Brian Felice, BD Felice on Instagram if you want to look me up. Because I want to have a space where locals and creatives here in the Bronx are able to access this and say, hey, listen, I am going to submit a proposal to this venue because I want to do an event there that's for us, by us, and that they'll have a place that they can go to. And I'm not going to charge anything that's going to be Bronx-based because that's how we're doing things. That being said, I think that it's very important to having these classes and education. I'm open to anyone that wants to do any type of tech education. I know there's the Knowledge House, they do a lot of that. They have programs if you guys aren't familiar with them. But if anyone wants to partner on anything tech, anything design, anything in any of those areas, I'm with it. Just so you know, because I think that that's very important. Funding education is important, and I think that's an area where there's a lot of disagreements and friction, that there are people who understand funding and there are people who don't understand funding, as well as its impact on gentrification. And so I think it's important to clarify that and understand that all funding isn't bad funding, but there is a such thing as bad funding and as bad business, and so it's important to see the difference between the two. That being said, you know what I mean? Look me up, hit me up.
So sorry. So I wanted to, this is Charles up here. So I know that I want to hear more. I've been taking a ton of notes because I think it's really powerful. I think one of the things that I'm going to say loving about what's being shared today from all the extremes, is that I think one of the things that I came here hoping for and getting is that if we could create the spaces to have really expansive conversations about this. We're passionate. We feel a certain kind of way about things. We have values, right? We have values that we stick to and hold to and want to espouse. And I think we should keep them and hold them. And I think that's part of what social responsibility is, understanding that. And also social responsibility, I'm going to say this, is subjective, right? And it's a value. It's a value that I have, but it's not a value that everybody may share, and they may not understand it the same way I do. So I think we probably need to tease that out. But when I talk about an expansive conversation, it's being able, and it's the hard part, to hold all of these things in the room at the same time. Right, that Ramona made the invitation to artists as saying, like, what are you getting out of it? I mean, it's important to have that conversation, because there were artists that were getting something out of it. I think it's important for us to continue to find more spaces to continue doing this. When the young woman, I think she's coming back to her seat, she was like, do your research, right? Ask questions, connect to community. But then the other part is make a decision, right? How do we make decisions? And the gentleman that was speaking here said, there's good money and there's bad money, and that's decisions that you have to make, right, as artists and as people. And for us to, I'm going to use the word win, because I want the Bronx to win, right? And I mean, for us in this room to win, that I think we have to create that space and able to do that. And there are people that I'm very close to here, and there are people that I'm not close to. And because they decide to make decisions on the values and the things that they want to do, and I'm like, do your thing, right? But I'm not just do your thing, I'm doing my thing, right? And so one of the things that I do want to add to the conversation is that as we talk about the spaces here in the Bronx, right? And I'm with BAD, right? That's one of the spaces that I'm with. I'm also teach down at Ostos, and there's another whole issue with the CUNY campuses that have spaces available but not necessarily accessible, and there are different programs to make them accessible. So I think there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and I think that, I was speaking earlier and said, I don't know if we're going to come up with solutions, but I think today we're going to have the opportunity to have conversations and develop the relationships to continue the solutions. One place I want to, in addition to speaking about BAD, has people been to, who's been to BAD? Okay, BAD, the Bronx Academy of Arts and Dance. Okay, so not many. So that's some work that we need to do, that BAD does. And the thing to know about arts organizations in the Bronx, there's a ton of studies, right? Everything we're talking about, ton of studies that show how under-resources there are organizations who are created by people of color and to serve people of color, how under-resourced we are, right? And with the under-resourcedness that we do a lot of work and a lot of work. So when I say that there's work that we both need to do, BAD to continue getting our word out there, and for us to seek the spaces and then go to the spaces and try to engage the spaces. And I'm just gonna say my space, because I think Walter will speak for Andrew Freedman. The other thing I want to share, just the other hat that I wear with the Bronx Council on the Arts, when I'm hearing all of you, or some of you speak today, there's some things that are in place about legal clinics and workshops and stuff like that. How do we get that? How do we find maybe do them here, do them in different venues to try to bring these resources to the artists so we can all get stronger? And also the Bronx Council has been doing, did some listening, is doing some other things to figure out like what do we need to be doing next. So that's some guidance, like we have ideas, but there's guidance that we need from our community. So the idea of do the research, ask the questions, connect to the community, and then I'm gonna say make decisions. And then I just want to I want to hear some more, but also the idea of social responsibility that we continue doing that. So today, I just wanted to, I've been listening a lot. I wanted to share some stuff. I want to make the invitation to definitely come to BAD, definitely connect with the Bronx Council to make sure that we at the very least, are aware of all the resources that currently exist and how we can bring all those resources together to at least address some of the things that are coming up in the room.
Hi, I'm Jariah Claire. Well, first of all, I want to say I completely agree with everything you're saying because I think it's important to just be careful of where you're getting your money because at the end of the day, you need to follow the money to where it's coming from and if those are people that you want to be associated with. I was supposed to perform at It's the Bronx, and I definitely feel like I was exploited. I know a lot of people feel like that wasn't their experience, but I think it's also important to consider a few things. I'm assuming most of us were prepared to perform at this for free. A lot of us were paying for our own resources. A lot of us were collecting and doing our own promotion and having our faces all over this event where we were given a platform, but we weren't really benefiting, and it was at the expense of a lot of the people around us in this community. And I think there are a lot of important parts to this that I can't talk about all at the same time. But I think one of them is just that, we as artists, we have power and we have autonomy. And no matter how many people we have in charge and giving us these platforms and being heads of a lot of the things that we need, there are more of us than anything else. The Bronx is full of creatives and we have the power to make things happen that we need to happen, and we have the power to create resources that we need. So, I think it's also important when, say, something like this comes along, It's the Bronx, that we have the power to turn things down. And I think that is a privilege. It's a privilege for us to be here and for us to be able to talk about these things. But I think when we're given the knowledge that an opportunity we're being given is at the expense of people that we care about, people in our own communities, and for a lot of us at our own expense, because this is our community, we have the power to not let things like this slide. I think when I found out about a lot of what was happening, with It's the Bronx and with Union Crossing, I had to make a very difficult decision, which is, I wanted to speak up about it. And, obviously that comes with a lot of conflict of interest because I'm supposed to be performing at this thing. I'm telling people to come to this event, come support me, come support these artists, while I know that they're supporting things that I don't want them to support. And that's a very difficult thing. I realize that not everybody, for some of us, I'm a student, I'm an illustrator, I'm an animator, and I'm a musician. But for a lot of us, this art, this is what our livelihood is what we live off of. And not everybody has the opportunity to turn down every opportunity that they don't perfectly align with. But we definitely, we have power and we have autonomy, and we can't allow people to come and invade our spaces and collaborate with them when we know that at the end of the day, we're not gonna get, unlimited chances to stop these things. If there were 10 It's the Bronxes, we would have already lost people. We would have already displaced people in our own communities. And if you got your big break from one of those, that's great for you, but you are disenfranchising a lot of people in your own spaces. But I think on the flip side of that is that a lot of us are talking about lack of resources in our communities. And for a lot of us, I think just, we're from the Bronx, and I think a lot of us, our mentality is, well, we deal with it, If there's not something, we make it. And if there's something that we need that's not being given to us, then we find a way. And I think that's important, if there's something that's not there that you need, you find a way. If you need a place to perform or display your art, you make that happen. But I think we also have to make sure that we are demanding the things that we should be afforded as a part of this community. I live like down the block. I'd never heard of this place before It's the Bronx. I asked my parents who've lived here for 25, 30 years, neither of them had heard of it. And I think that that's a problem. And I think when we're in a community, sure, we can create spaces and we can collaborate with people and we can make new things happen. But when there are people in our communities whose responsibility is to be providing for us and they're not providing, we need to make sure that we are holding them accountable, because that's what everything here today is about. This isn't about, how do we step around the problem? How do we bandage, where we have been left, wanting or needing something. We have to make sure that the people that are supposed to be giving us these opportunities and supposed to be giving us these platforms and these resources for us to do what we need, that we are, not asking, but demanding that they give us these things. Because this is what, we deserve to have resources. We live here, and people come here and they benefit off of our history and our culture, but we still aren't able to have a lot of the things that people from other communities can take for granted. I'm standing here with Hydropunk today, and they're coming, with demands, and there are a lot of them, but I think it's important to know that, they're not asking for much, they're asking for things that we should already have and things that we should be able to, things that, we're not begging or whining. These are things that we should have had, and if our parents lived here, they should have had. But, instead, we're being pushed in the corners where we have to take money from people we don't want to, which we don't have to do. And I'm almost done. And yeah, being pushed in the corners where we are doing things that are not good for us and for our community. And I think, I respect the whole grind and hustle thing, but there are things that we should be given, and we should demand those things from the people who are supposed to be giving them.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Raymond Latavisi. Can I get a show of hands if everyone can hear me? Everyone can hear me loud and clear? Thank you very much. So, I've learned so much in the last couple of months. Never knew of this place, great resource. The libraries, I'll talk about it in a couple of minutes, it's another great resource. And how many of us go to the library on a daily basis? Okay, there we go, a couple. See, but not as many hands as we would expect seeing in this room, based off of the conversations and the topics that we're talking about and the change we want to see. So education, I'm a big proponent of holding yourself accountable and responsible for everything you do. And if there's another mic, can we please turn it off? Because can we just turn off all the mics, if there is one open? All right, thank you. So my girlfriend was participating in It's the Bronx. I never knew of It's the Bronx, I never knew of Hydropunk. I've protested against the Federal Reserve, Monsanto, police brutality. I did it all. And I'm only 28 years old. I went so hard, it's no joke. Okay, but that's besides the point. If you felt like you were exploited, my girlfriend is well diversed in advertising herself, marketing herself, value creation, posting up constantly. She holds herself accountable, and the success follows those individuals. So thank you, panel, for having us all here today. And we're the small percentage that might care more than the individuals who did not come here today, right? So if we're here for solutions, I might have heard only less than a handful of solutions, right? I'm a conscious observer to all of this. I didn't participate specifically in showing artwork, but I was indirectly impacted, and with that, I have learned so much. And we all here care a little bit more than the next person. I'm not trying to generalize, but if we want to see solutions, we have to create them ourselves if these institutions that are out here are not caring for our self-interests, right? So everyone who was wrongly impacted or felt, that's not the point. We're here for solutions. So young lady here, propose a solution, right? Gentleman over here, co-op, we're trying to do something different. So if Andrew Freedman, I'm proud to know I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I'm proud to know my brother here, Carl with a K, right? Author, entrepreneur, educator, business owner. He reached out to Andrew Freedman, and he's not part of It's the Bronx, none of this. He just has that drive and the intelligence to reach out to already existing institutions, right? He has an attack plan. He has value to give to other people, not just to show, because we're all out here trying to survive, right? So if we're all here and we could all agree on one thing, let's focus on that one thing. If we're going to talk about 50 different things, it's going to be much harder and much longer to get to a solution. So with that said, the next person, appreciate y'all. Take care. Thank you very much.
Hi. Stop, yeah, don't rush me. I'm Elliot, I'm a musician, and outside of that, I'm a cycling educator. I work with, thank you for the claps, those who know me. There's a lot of things being mentioned. There's this talk of resources. I don't want to patronize anybody, but American History 101, we're black and brown, we don't have fucking resources, so we need to stop pretending like we just have the money, or that like we just, let's stop. One solution I have is a proposition for Andrew Freedman Home and other institutions who are present in the building is, how can we make you more political? Institutions need to have more of a communal and political backbone. They need to serve a purpose. They need to align themselves with the community. And going back into the community, I don't think we have a problem with social responsibility or holding each other accountable. As toxic as some conversations may be, I think we're not embarrassed to say, hey, you did some shit fucked up, or I'm not trusting what you're doing, maybe we should talk about it. It's not that. The relationship now is, I think the community is now fostering stronger relationships. This is engaging that. Now it really is the responsibility of the institutions now, because now you're tapping in to what the community needs, the desires, the demands. Now, what are we all going to do from that point?
Hi, I'll be brief. My name is Yolanda Rodriguez. I'm here representing myself, but I'm also part of BXR's factory. Thank you. A lot of friends in the house, thank you. We started a nonprofit organization 4 years ago because of the same things that we're hearing here today. We notice a lot of artists reaching out to us. Every year we get so many emails, so many people reaching out and saying, hey, can you help me produce this thing? I have this idea. I would like to do this. I have this art project. I have this collective. Just to say that the Bronx is, the creatives here really do what is needed to get their stuff out there. So I just want to put that out there. We are hustling, we are doing, and we are seeing the need, and as a community, we're coming along and saying, you know what, I'm going to create a space for us. Music spaces, art spaces. I have seen many collectives being formed among artists, many co-op businesses being formed among vendors and businesses. So all of these things are already happening in the Bronx. I've learned through these 4.5 years of existence that I never want to say that things are not happening in the Bronx. I learned very early that I'm standing in the history of a lot of people that came before us. And I have to respect that all the way. I am going to be 45, and I've seen the younger generation raise up in ways that I haven't seen in a while. I am not a Bronx native. I was born in Puerto Rico, and I moved here. I moved here at the age of 23 to learn English. Good news, I did learn English. I have lived in the Bronx ever since. Due to many crazy stuff, my first 10 years in the Bronx, I had 10 different addresses. So I know what it is to have to move around because you cannot afford your rent, because you have rats coming in through the vents. I know. I've been lucky enough to be educated, and I'm well placed now after many years of hard work. So when we started BXR's factory, the 4 of us were not born in the Bronx, but we love this borough. Okay, I'm getting emotional, sorry. It's very sad for us that every single year we have to say no to so many people that email us because we don't have the resources. We're a very small, volunteer-led, grassroots arts organization in the Bronx that have no money, but we still hustle, we still pay the artists. No, I'm not crying. What I want to say this because we have reached out to organizations that have been established here. I recently learned, for example, that the only museum we have closed their community programming. Yes, I just learned this. I don't know if this is old news, sorry, but I was in shock because that was one of the things that we had. I was like, hey, can I have a little something, you know? We also didn't have a space. So our organization ran basically in my car for 4 years and a little storage. I'm lucky to have a vehicle, I understand that. But that vehicle helped. It helped us bring art to every community. We work in about 18 neighborhoods in the Bronx. We build relationships with many of you that are here. We know you guys because we had to do events at some point with you or at your venues or whatever. That's how we build relationships. We need funding. But then when we come, right, so a festival, whatever, let's not talk about the festival. Somebody come from outside, all of a sudden they come with all this funding. And I'm telling you, I'm a little bitter. We've been here for 4 years, and we try to fundraise so hard, and we cannot get that funding. And we have to say no to more and more projects every single day. We received so many proposals that we couldn't do it. So we said, can we just open a call in the month of August and see what we get, and then pick from that. Even from that list, because of our funding, this year we only were able to pick 2 projects to be able to help. We help them produce, we teach them, they're like we mentor them, they become our family, and we make their things happen. We don't get paid, but they will get paid, and we produce their events. It's very difficult. I just want to put that out there because sometimes we don't support what's in-house, and that's very important to know.
Is this mic on? Can y'all hear me? All right, I want to address a couple of the things that were said in this room. 1, social activism is not a privilege. Social activism is a burden. Social activism is a burden. Protest as an exhibition of resistance, which is part of social activism, is a burden. Let me finish. It takes a lot of work. A lot of work when you have to go to school and raise children and work a lot of jobs to pay that rent. Social activism on top of that is a lot of fucking work. It is not a privilege, it's a burden, and it's a burden that would be less of a burden if most of us participated. Because I'm tired, I don't want to do this shit no more. So, you know, I always tap my hat to Hydropunk, who's the generation coming up behind me. I'm tired, I don't want to do this shit no more. Please, join us. 2, I just want to present a scenario here to lead to my next point. This mic is going in and out. May I switch out? Thank you. One, two, 1, 2. Can you hear me now? Thank you. Okay, so Ramona mentioned EXR, which is the latest project for Keith Rubenstein and Somerset Partners. EXR is a real estate brokerage firm. He is hiring, what do you say, like a lot of brokers to come into the Bronx and work from the South Bronx to now scavenge the rest of the Bronx to see what land is available. We know, because we're sitting on the Grand Concourse, that all of the Grand Concourse is, has just been rezoned, right? So we know that this land is like about to get fucking torn apart, okay? We know that the Southern Boulevard rezoning is coming down the pipeline, which is what my group fights, which starts at 149th and goes all the way up to Crotona Park, okay? We already know that because of Fordham University, that the gentrification as a result of colleges and universities expanding, that Fordham University is about to become a fucking done deal, okay? So we know that this is the landscape. When you have a Keith Rubenstein who's hiring real estate brokers and we are all unemployed, you see the situation here is really like a situation about capitalism, right? You have a small town in Pennsylvania that their mining industry has left. And what comes in its place is, say, what there is a whole lot of in Pennsylvania, it's, I'm sorry, I'm stepping away because I can't hear. What you have a lot of in Pennsylvania is prisons, right? So capitalism will put us in a situation where prisons becomes the only job that you can really do in the community. We know the situation with prisons. We know that people, black and brown people, a lot of Puerto Ricans from New York have moved to Pennsylvania because they've been displaced to go to jail, basically. Now, this becomes an ethical issue because now you've been on unemployment for over a year and now you got a jail as a job as a CO at the new prison. Are you going to turn to say, you know what, this is not a good job, are you gonna turn away that check? Probably not. You're like, I know this is fucked up, I'm gonna work in this prison anyway because it's providing for my family. So the same situation with EXR. With EXR, you have this real estate firm who's coming in where, you know what, I've actually lost friends who became real estate brokers because they were mad about my criticisms about real estate brokers. Picture yourself taking this job, you got your fucking name tag, you got your briefcase, and you get your listings. And the listings that you get is where your grandmother lives. This is the situation that we are in. This is the landscape. This is the landscape that you are in. If you're an artist, if you're a musician, you are being weaponized because you carry with you all of this beautiful culture, and when they set you up in that, oh, you can take this space, you could use this space. You become what is called in real estate, you're staging. You're part of the staging. So when Katie and Susie come off the train on 138th Street, they go, wow, look at this great coffee shop. Oh, cute little boutique. Oh, look at these artists, they're so great, they're like doing their thing, you know? You become staging. With that, I want to say to the portrait artist, the Dominican portrait artist, with the understanding that we have laid out in multiple ways before you, you will not secure a bag on our watch like that. You will not. This is not an issue about I am free to do what I want to do as an artist and you shouldn't tell me whether I'm being oppressed or not. There is a community, there is a structural problem here that artists are being implicated in. That means that my family is ripe for displacement. We are across the street from fucking housing court. There's a line there every fucking day. Melissa Calderon, who was under eviction notices, was staring at this shit, creating her work in this building. We know that there's a housing crisis. It's a structural problem. Artists are playing a major role in it, especially black and brown artists locally. You are being used. They'd rather us be in this room here arguing with each other so we're not down there burning their shit down. So if you know all of this information, you've been given all of the information, and you choose to say, well, fuck it, I don't care. You know what? Marco Shama or Keith Rubenstein, you know, they might be dicks or whatever, but hey, listen, they putting money in my pocket, so I don't give a fuck. Then you have made a choice. And you know what? The response to that is, you know, fuck you, and we're gonna steamroll right over you. Okay? Last, I wanna say, as an artist, my art is like a decolonial Baroque that's like mixes text and painting and sculpture and all this other shit. My shit is not social activism. Social activism and art are not the same thing. Social activism is a responsibility because I fucking live somewhere and I don't want to pay rent every month and I want to change the environment for my 5 nieces and nephews. That has nothing to do with what happens in my studio. Let's keep those things separate, please.
I just want to add something really quickly. A great conversation. I'm going to read something because it gets at the crux of a lot of what we're talking about. This is a quote from a book called The New York Calling. It's by Marshall Berman, who was a humanist, an urbanist, who lived in the Tremont section of the Bronx. And this is what he wrote about an elected official at the time in the 1970s. Starr, Roger Starr is his full name, had a profile something like Robert Moses, a German Jewish patrician intellectual with the Yale education and a lifelong dedication to public service in New York. At different times, he served as the city housing commissioner, as an officer of several foundations, and an urban affairs editor of the Times. Starr's idea for dealing with the fiscal crisis was to divide the city into populations of productive majority that deserved to be saved and an unproductive minority that should be driven out. Starr would take advantage of existing patterns of race and class segregation and strive to eliminate not bad individuals, but bad neighborhoods. Once a neighborhood was targeted for extinction, a state power could assault in a very structured and coordinated way. Close schools and health facilities, suspend police protection, turn off water mains, disconnect electric power and lines, and garbage collection. Do everything to make a neighborhood humanly uninhabitable. Through coordinated administrative actions in many neighborhoods, Starr didn't say which, the city could eliminate an unproductive 2 million people. It wasn't specified where they would go, but the great thing for the city, as he and his friends saw it, was that once they were out, the city wouldn't have to care. And this is what he quoted. Quote, and Roger Starr is saying this, "We should stop the rural Puerto Ricans and blacks from living in the city and reverse the role of the city. It can no longer be the place of opportunity. Our urban system is based on a theory of taking the peasant and turning him into an industrial worker. Now there are no industrial jobs. Why not keep him a peasant?" End quote. What this is talking about and grounding is the dehumanization of black and brown bodies that have continued for over 400 years. You are in rooms, I am in rooms of people when you try to make an argument about human value and the hierarchy that we keep reinforcing the way we design our communities, the way we build, the way we subsidize. We're still dealing with the Roger Starrs who are in positions of authority, whether they're in the form of city elected officials that are sitting and saying they want to have the best interest of the people in their community, or of the nonprofit industrial complex that are put in the front line to continue to poverty pimp the conditions of our community. So as far as solutions, and we may think it's the cliche, but if you don't hold elected officials accountable, and that means voting them out of office, that means every time there's a discussion around subsidies, that people that are combining housing with profit and commodification and calling it affordable housing and accessible housing. If you don't show up, not just to artist meetings, but the meetings that dictate the ecosystems that we operate in, I get laughed out of rooms when we talk about equitable development, land tenure, that's steeped in a history of dehumanization. All of us have to show up, not to hear only, but to City Hall and say, if subsidies in my name, $1.5 billion are gonna go to develop Hudson Yards, I guarantee you, you will not get elected in this coming election. We are in, you talk about EB5, we talk about massive real estate investment trusts that are being formed that fund the Rubensteins of America. And if you do not, and I say it again, watch where you even spend your dollar. Watch where you go buy your Gucci or your sneakers or you watch, listen, look at what is happening.
because it's a collective effort. And then believe me, when you start holding people responsible and accountable by threatening their political power, watch those resources start being diversified to the right people in this community.
Hello. Hi, mucho gusto. How's everyone? Yeah? My name is Monica Flores. I'm co-founder of Hydropunk. Thank you for having us here today. I was born and raised in the Bronx. The Bronx is the place that accepted my immigrant family that came here in the 70s. Soy chicana, orgullosa. From Boyle Heights, LA, California, to Wynwood, Miami, art and culture is being used as a tool to market and rebrand working class communities. The Mexican community in California is being displaced as we speak, and Wynwood, Miami displaced working class Haitian families, and it is now an arts district for the elite. We threw our bodies on the line at that rally, not to attack the artist, but to attack the developers. And we, the artists, will not feed the developers. A little backstory on Hydropunk and why we came about. We were established in 2014, and we were born and raised in the Bronx. Some of us come from underserved families or neighborhoods in crises. Creativity is our instinct to survival. It is our safe haven. It is what keeps us alive. Hydropunk is an art and media collective straight out of the Bronx that organizes cultural projects as an effort to unify local creatives and Bronxites. We are not a nonprofit. We are not an institution. We don't take government money. We don't take nonprofit money. We have been able to sustain ourselves over the last 6 years through community funding. How? Yeah. By hosting local punk and hip hop shows in basements, backyards, lo que sea. And we've made it happen. We are a testament that we can sustain ourselves by providing the alternate, by being autonomous. And we're doing it. Through the creation of local punk and hip hop events, art expos, and political workshops, we seek to create an art scene that recognizes the politics and culture that the Bronx is rooted on. The goal is to uplift our community and support inner city creatives. And since 2014, we produced 20 events within the Bronx and New York City. That being said, we are here today to represent 70 artists that filled our art survey, giving community input on what they would like to see from community institutions. And I'm gonna give you the packet right here. We did the labor, and we've been doing the labor over the last 5 years, and we're so thankful to have collectives such as Take Back the Bronx that educated us on the hyper realities on how gentrification is affecting all of us. Hello, my name is Tiara Torres. I'm from the Bronx. I'm an educator, I am an artist, and as of 5 days ago, I'm the first in my family to be a graduate student. But with my privilege and access is not the same as many of my friends and the community in the Bronx. We started a survey this week and received over 70 responses in 1 week. While reading the answers to these surveys, a common thread that went through was the education barriers that kept local artists from even walking into a space like this. This is only my second time in this space. The first was only because of Bombayo. And a lot of the testaments we received was that people who have not had a higher education look at the applications for artist studios and look at the job applications and feel that it's not for them because they don't have access to higher education. When you're applying to studios, when you're applying to jobs, and I'm letting you know because I'm looking for a job, a lot of the minimum requirement is that you have a BA or an MFA in studio art. That's not the reality for a lot of us here in the Bronx. And I have the privilege to say that I'm going to school for my teaching certification because what I realize in the education system in the Bronx is that a lot of teachers are not from the Bronx. And I hear them on the 4 train talking very demeaning and belittling our kids because they don't understand how our kids talk and they don't understand why they act the way they do.
And so that's why I'm going to school. Okay, sorry. Many of the skills that I did learn didn't even come from school, but came from hustling, trying to make enough money to eat and pay off my student loans. We're highlighting accessibility challenges that we hope every organization in this room and watching takes action to improve. Because to take accountability is not scary. It doesn't make you weak. When you remove yourself and remove your ego to listen to community that you're working in, and I say working in because I don't know how many employees within these institutions actually live here, you realize that accountability is love, and accountability is necessary. It's being proactive in your practices and ethics, more than just words and photo ops for the website and your grant receipts. We're here today to let organizations know that we see them and that the people are watching and questioning who's being complicit as our rents continue to rise. And we offered our labor and our time to be here and to give you a list of our solutions that I'm gonna read after, the list is going to continue to grow because we're keeping the form open, and we're going to we're gonna email all of you and also publish our letter to improve and to continue adding what we need and what we expect from these spaces that already exist. We look forward to the future, and in the end, we realize we don't look for a seat at your table. And Hydropunk has been creating our own spaces for the past couple of years. And so for us, we're making the demands on behalf of all of our friends who couldn't be here today because they're at work. So we're gonna read you the demands, and for us, we know that if it's not enacted upon, we're gonna continue to create our own spaces outside. So to start, we're gonna begin with access. All of these are still forming. These were based on the surveys that we collected online. So to begin with access, people want to ensure that locals can have access to venue spaces for free or at discounted rates. $3,500 for a venue space is a lot for us. It is a lot. And we would like transparency as to why it costs that much, so that we can understand that we can pull our sources and that we can fundraise if we have to be able to get that space, as long as we know why it's that much and what we're getting out of it. Another alternative could also be that we barter some type of service or rearrange the rent for a venue space, where as opposed to paying a set price that the venue would take a % from the door, or that we volunteer for your other programs in exchange for having a space to meet or a space to market. We would like a diverse and localized curatorial and executive leadership, because I'm tired of only having positions where I'm the face of visitor service or that we're the faces of janitorial staff. We need people from the Bronx at executive leadership positions and not just at minimum wage positions. We want more aggressive outreach regarding programs and events, because in social media is our tool of today, but it's not the only tool. Many of our neighbors in the skate park down the block have never even been inside this building, and so it needs to be online and offline. We recommend that these are job positions to hire locals from this neighborhood, to flyer, to table outside, to improve. Put 5 bulletin boards. You have one tiny one outside the gate. We can create more. We can table at events. And the people here are willing to help and willing to be employed here in order to help with that outreach. And posting things online the same week of the event, a lot of people don't see it. I don't get to see all the programs that are here. I find out about the artist residency applications when it's too late. And this is something that needs to be updated on the website and updated across all streams. We also want this outreach to be in multiple languages, because in the Bronx, we have many different communities that don't speak English or Spanish. We have many French Creole speakers. We have many different languages, and so everything needs to be translated. When it comes to artist residencies and studio spaces and the grants, we feel that they should target and prioritize Bronx residents first. Programming. For programming, we would like a land acknowledgement for all institutions in the Bronx to be afforded to the Lenape people because we're on occupied land right now. This structure itself stands as a testament to class because the founding of this building was not for our class when it was founded for rich elder people. For continuing the program, we would like to develop vending and retail opportunities for entrepreneurs who are aligned in their social justice entrepreneur principles. We would like a place to market. We would also like these monthly town halls to occur because this is not the end of the conversation. We feel that the topics should also include topics like rezoning, sustainable housing, economic development, health, and food justice. We would like artist empowerment courses on subjects such as how to contract yourself as a freelancer, how to protect your artwork, to write proposals and grants. Yes, that's including Bronx Council of the Arts. This goes to everyone. It's not also just like directed to Andrew Freedman Home. This applies to everyone. We would like to conduct quarterly surveys to determine community interest and identify needed preferred programs and exhibitions. Because while we're on this street of Grand Concourse, how many of the community members in the surrounding area actually had a say in what they wanted to see? I don't live on Grand Concourse. People here should have the first say of what kind of programs, what kind of after schools, what they want to see here. Community development, we would like paid internships for high school students and beyond that develop and retain Bronx talent because we need more youth and we need more local community members without a higher education to have access, to have control and leadership. We would like employment strategies that prioritize Bronx talent and economic sustainability. And we would like networking opportunities and job fairs that do highlight careers in the arts, because almost every job fair in the Bronx just leads us to work for factories that pay us at minimum wage. For ethical operations for all institutions in the Bronx, we would like annual reports on funding sources to be published and to ensure galleries and museums are not complicit in the displacement of local residents. And all of these demands will be made up in a letter, and we would like the signees to commit to turn down events, projects, meetings, and programming associated with developers and landlords that don't have adequate affordable housing catalogs. These demands were made up in less than a week by 70 testaments gathered by us online and for free. This is a continuing list that's going to keep growing and keep growing as this conversation keeps happening. And I don't want to keep talking about this, but we need to keep acting on it, because that's what accountability is. It's not just saying it, but it's doing it. And that's our piece.
One last thing, I had the privilege to graduate last May from Lehman College CUNY with a degree in journalism and a double minor in political science and photography. We at Hydropunk were excited to launch a Diaspora Media News, where I will be releasing an article highlighting the artist abuse that happened under Marco Shama. For the last 2 months, I had to listen to artist trauma. I got 7 testaments of artists that got exploited under his wing, and that is unjust. So to all the artist institutions, please, our artists need you. We need you, because these developers are abusing them and exploiting them, and enough is enough. Thank you.
So I think it's a lot. We kind of scrapped the agenda for today because this was, hold on one second. Because this conversation and hopefully beyond conversation to actual work and activism is important. I myself am thankful for what I heard because then I can actually act upon some of the things that you've said. And I'm speaking for Andrew Freedman. And I just want to say generally in relation to all of you, because we don't have a lot of money. Yes, we got 1.7 from Cuomo, but this is a huge building. So please just understand sometimes if it takes us a while, or a minute, not a while, to get back to you. But that's really a lot of it. And I look forward to, hold on one second, I look forward to the artists who said they're gonna apply. Please do apply. And we're committed to Bronx artists. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for being here. I see there's 2 more people who have something to say. I see you. 3 more people, I see you. But I wanted to say, I saw her, that's why she's the 3rd. But I want to say thank you very much for being here. We're going to do this quarterly, so, and more organized. So I hope that you continue to be a part of this. All right, so thank you very much for being here today. And please be patient for 3 more people, 3 last people, and then we're just gonna stop. And yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexander Tapia. I'm here with my partner, Priscilla, and together we both represent No Carne Lifestyle, No Carne Bodega, which is a vegan online grocery store. We do delivery here in the Bronx. We were, thank you. First let me just say I'm not as well spoken as most of those people that speak here, so I understand if I don't get the grand applause as everybody else. Other than that, basically, we were gonna partake in the infamous It's the Bronx event, and we're not artists, or at least I'm no longer an artist or whatnot. I don't consider myself an artist anymore, because when it comes to the artist and social responsibility, I decided to put my artistic aspirations on hold for a cause that I thought was more important for everybody, whether or not you agree with the person on the other side of the aisle or whatnot, and that's climate change. And I feel like no one here is addressing that. And I understand that this is for artists or whatnot, but I just felt like I had a friend of mine who was gonna perform at It's the Bronx that was gonna address that issue as well as all the other issues that were being represented here today. I also feel like when it comes to activism and whatnot, you can just come to the event and protest at the event, disrupt it, be willing to get arrested for it or whatnot. That's what I did during OWS, Occupy Wall Street. So, that's that. Anyway, I just wanted to basically, I guess, for lack of a better term, clear our name, because we were attacked during that whole It's the Bronx thing without anybody really knowing what our cause was and whatnot, and what it is that we stand for. We were kind of just collectively thrown on the other side with the quote-unquote enemies. So I just wanted to make sure I say my piece when it comes to that. And I just want to also say that when it comes to hydropunk, I've been reaching out to them since about 2015, 2016, before No Carne ever existed. And I don't know, maybe my Instagram feed doesn't align with their beliefs or whatnot, but I never got any sort of response or felt included, when in reality, I've been feeling the same way about all these same issues for a long time. So I just feel like we gotta do a better job at coming together and, hearing each other out, and that's that.
All right, peace, y'all. My name is Kennedy Geffinger. I'm an educator. I am a true activist in the community. Do a lot of work in the community. So I want to give thanks for Andrew Freedman Home and everybody here. You definitely inspire me, what you're saying, everything. So basically, I have an organization. It's called Keys to Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a word from Nguni Bantu tribe in Southern Africa called I am because we are. that we're all related, some interconnectedness between all of us. So I have an organization, it's a keychain. You get discounts at businesses owned by people of color throughout New York City. The sales from the discounts go back to local grassroots organizations for them to be able to provide resources and what they do in their organizations to be able to provide back to our communities. So it's an infinite cycle for us to be able to provide our money back into our communities. So this is something like everything that y'all are saying about the resources, you're demanding this, you're needing to be able to provide the resources for artists to know how to be able to legally, to legally, obtain their work and keep it like for them and trademark it, and then different ways for business owners to be able to market, to be able to get the resources that help them grow and be able to franchise or be able to expand their businesses or organizations. This is a way to do it, because I don't see anything else that's circulating our dollars. We're talking about supporting black money, black pockets. This is how you do it, by supporting each other. And the way that we cycle it back into our communities at the end of the day. Because we can talk about, supporting black, we can help, mom and pops down the street with, whatever they're doing. But at the end of the day, if they don't know that we're valuing them, and they are a value hub, if you have not realized, businesses are what brings value into our communities. Andrew Freedman Home is what brings value into our communities at the end of the day. This is how we preserve. They are a cultural hub for our people. So that's the only way we're going to be able to preserve it. If we're supporting them, that's the only way. So this is a way for business, community, organizations, for people to get involved with each other, to be able to provide resources to each other, and not even just in a business sense, but in every single sense of the word, from the business owner to the consumer, to the child that's still in the womb, to the land that's a part of it. It runs deep. And this is something I'm more than happy to talk about it with any and everybody. I don't want to hold any of y'all time. At the end of the day, that's how it helps. And there are many businesses that are a part of it. There's restaurants, bars, hotels, spas. There's all different businesses that are a part of it that are all over the 5 boroughs, other than Staten Island. Still working on it, if anybody knows. But that's some way to be able to get back and be able to connect with each other in that way. And I'm here. I have flyers, Instagram, I have Facebook, everything. And we're sitting here talking about it. Putting together a panel discussion now to be able to put a financial advisor, a real estate person, a woman who's owned a bookstore in Harlem, Sisters Bookstore in Harlem for 20-something years. Those are the people I'm trying to put in front of us so we can start talking about how they've survived, how they get through, and how they're wanting to get back to their communities, and that's only going to grow from there. So please, check it out, Keys to Ubuntu, UBUNTU, and y'all stay blessed.
Oh, hi. Hi, everybody. I'm going to make it really quick because I'm nervous and I hate public speaking and I'm like literally shaking in my boots. But my name is Angelica De La Cruz and I'm an Afro-Latina. I was raised in Hunts Point. I just moved to Mount Haven and I'm 1/3 of Tribe Co-Create. These are my tribe right here. Thank you. We are an up-and-coming community space and co-working space for black and brown, queer, trans, BIPOC folks trying to reclaim the future of the Bronx. I want to piggyback off of what the young lady said from Afropunk, hydropunk. Child, listen, I saw that girl's beautiful afro, and I'm just thinking afro, right? From Hydropunk, sorry. I just want to piggyback off what she said, and to speak off of our experiences. There is there is space in the Bronx, right? But they're not accessible to us, and they're not accessible to people who look like us. They're not affordable. Their values don't align with our values. We're forced to collaborate and have events out of our living rooms because these spaces don't exist. I have a little note right here, so excuse me real quick because I was nervous, right? So, we really we just came today because we heard you guys speaking about social responsibility, and we want to be responsible to our community and just ask folks. Y'all don't have to answer it now. We know we're gonna stick around a little bit so you guys can speak with us. But we want to know, how can we come in as a new, as 3 queer Black Afro-Latinas from the Bronx, new entrepreneurs, like how can we support each other? How can we support you in this process? Yeah, so that's it, because I'm really nervous, so thank you.
Okay, so I think I'm next. What's up, everybody? My name is Ana Karen. And I really shouldn't be taking up space right now because I'm from LA, I'm visiting, it was my first time in New York. But homegirl said Boyle Heights earlier, and that's where I live. It's the neighborhood that I am an accomplice to. And my homies are from Defend Boyle Heights, and they're holding it down there. And I just want to say though, like, gentrification is happening everywhere, right? We are getting hit hard. And we have seen entire neighborhoods wiped out in California. I'm talking about the Mission in San Francisco. I'm talking about Oakland, West Oakland, East Oakland's next, right? I'm talking about Richmond, LA, Santana, Chinatown, El Sereno. So this is happening everywhere in all the fucking cities, right? Like, wealthier folks, like mostly white, but also Black and brown people are moving in with more economic privilege, displacing people and changing the face and like even names some fucking entire neighborhoods. Homegirl over here is talking about El Barrio, and when you get off on that stop, it's no longer there. She walked me through her neighborhood, and the shops that she grew up shopping in are no longer there, right? And so I do think, and the thing I just want to mention is that we are also having this issue with artists, right? Who are like now the creative class, right? Like folks who, like, our parents grew up working with their hands, right? And they liberated us from like labor with our bodies, right? Like, let's talk about, they did, right? Because they're the ones who have arthritis. They're the ones whose back hurts, right? And they work so hard to liberate us from that shit. And so now we're working over here with our brain and dealing with the issues that come with that too, with the trauma that comes with that. But, artists in Boyle Heights have also been feeding gentrification. Boyle Heights has been able to defend Boyle Heights, and I'm not taking credit for their work. They're my homies, though. But they've been able to kick out breweries. They've been able to kick out galleries, recognizing that these are not spaces for our neighborhood, even when it's Black and brown artists taking picture of our neighborhoods and then putting them up on a wall for white people to see, right? So like, it's not like our moms and the doñas and the señoras and the folks who are like going to see this shit, right? Like, why would I go to a fucking like gallery to see myself? Like as if I already don't fucking exist. Right? So we really need to be careful. I do, I'm trying to be more zen and like, whatever. Like, but like, let's do center compassion, right? Like homie's talking about over there how, we do need to check in with each other. We do need to have the patience to talk with each other. But the other homie for Hydropunk also said, we only have so many fucking chances before it's the Mission, before, like our neighborhoods are completely bulldozed out and flattened out. Because let me tell you about the arts district in LA, which is the bridge between downtown LA and Boyle Heights. They literally built a white city. Like, they literally erected buildings where white people exist that protect them from the violence that we fucking experience every day. And so we really, like, with the homies saying, like, we only have so many chances, they are right. And artists, right, like, we will only check in so many times before we're like, pick a fucking side. You can't be ambiguous, right? And if you choose the wrong side, like, I'm sorry, bro, like, you're on the wrong side. And I also want to uplift the fact that, like, they were able to collaborate with 70 artists, right? So it's possible to pick the right side. That's possible. We have homies also in LA who have aligned with Defend Boyle Heights, who are artists, and they're like, yeah, actually, fuck this shit. And we support them. We figure out how to feed each other, not how to take more food away from the people that are already starving. I'm just gonna wrap it up, but I think the other piece, right, is creating options and alternatives for our folks where they don't exist. And then finally, closing off, I do want to uplift that it's capitalism, right? Like, let's name it more. Let's talk about how this is class warfare. And lift up Frantz Fanon, who says colonialism only loses its hold when a knife is at its throat.
I just want to, Andrew, I know you said it's going to take, sorry, the director, Walter.
Somebody's waiting to speak. And this is going to be the last person on the mic so we can wrap it up. I'll bring it to you.
Hello, can everybody hear me? How's everybody doing today? My name is Bruce Blue Rivera. I'm not here for self-promotion. I'm not here to plug a business. I'm not here to talk about anything. I'm a kid from the Bronx. I own business in the Bronx. This is a beautiful thing. I want you to look around at all the people that are in this room. Every time I hear somebody, we have different age groups, different colors, different backgrounds, different sections of the Bronx in this room alone. So I don't want to hear that we don't have influence, because that's bullshit. I don't want to hear, oh, I'm too scared to find money, because I'm an entrepreneur in the Bronx, and I look for programs to invest my money in. I own her shirts. I've eaten at their restaurants. My dollars speak for me. I want everybody here in this room, and the people that were too scared to be in this room, to hear the voices. This is a wake-up call, not only for everybody in this room, but for the organizations, for the places that facilitate art and things in our community. We need to drive that. We need to tell our narrative. We can't allow other people to tell our story. I said I was from the Bronx, so I grew up on jumping on pissy mattresses and burnt out buildings. That was my amusement park. So you will never tell me that I'm not good enough, because I made fun, and the mommies and poppies and mommy's restaurant and the bodegas, they built those burnt out buildings. So don't tell me 20, 30 years later that we need your help or that we can't do it. Because a lot of you younger people need to realize there's a lot of older people that want to support you. I don't want to say I'm one of those older people yet, but I might be a little bit older and might have a little more experience. Use those people, because guess what? Before Hydropunk, there was Young Lords. Before that, there was other organizations. And nobody stops. Activism has no age. I'm gonna tell you again, activism has no age. But a lot of us have children now. I have an 8-year-old son sitting right there. This is important. Not for me, for you, for him. Because we cannot stop. We have to be diligent. Look, it's not Marcos, there'll be another one later. Do you understand? Like, we can't be mad on Monday and have another cross to bear on Friday. We need to continue and be diligent to eradicate those people and those organizations. Because what they're gonna do is they're gonna back up, regroup, and come back again. The Bronx is huge. We need to organize. I'm tired of seeing, oh, I'm Mott Haven. Oh, I'm Kingsbridge. Oh, I'm Grand Concourse. Oh, I'm Throgs. Your problem is not my problem. Guess what? It's our problem. And all of us are talented. This is a wake-up call. Musicians, artists, entrepreneurs, organizers, journalists, writers, photographers. Someone needs your help. And they're trying to get that message out there. And I guarantee you, you have the same message. But we're to us. We keep it to our own. No, I can't help you. I can't help you. They're organizing. We need to organize. Get together. Have these. If they're not going to do it, have those meetings like the young lady said over there, in your living rooms, in your basements. These businesses will give you your room. But you have to let go of your ego and pride and say you need help. This is a movement. This is not an individual thing. It's not about pride. This is not about self-promotion. And if it is for you, then I got a horrible, horrible thing to tell you. You need to get out the way before you get trampled. Plain and simple. I'm a kid from the Bronx. I grew up here. Look, I'm an entrepreneur. I own business here. I don't have a degree. I had a GED. I was in the military at 17. Every opportunity was taken from me. So I heard people say, we don't have it. Yeah, we know what's going on. There's systematical flaws for us, but we cannot depend on that or fall back on that, because guess what? Together we can overcome that. And that's it. I want this meeting to be a wake-up call for everybody, institutions and everybody that was felt fearful to say, well, I don't want to speak up. Nobody's going to book me as an artist. Nobody's going to put my art in a gallery if I speak up. I guarantee all of you to have that in your mind. There is so many more people supporting you secretly that you don't even know. But you have to reach out. And they have to reach out too. I'm calling entrepreneurs, people that have access to politicians, to money, to funding, to fundraising, to venues. Reach out to these young people. Yeah, they're screaming and they're loud, but guess what? At one point in time, you was screaming and you was loud too. So I applaud Hydropunk. I applaud what you guys do. I applaud all the musicians, artists, Bronx, Create. I applaud you. Because guess what? Nobody's going to do it for us. And that's a newsflash wake-up call. Nobody's going to do it for us. The feet we stand right now is in the Bronx. It's not ours. We have to make it ours. And that's it. Just a kid from the Bronx.